Okay, now we're done with the training, so I can talk about it instead. So I've got major and minor blocks for the entirety of the season. For the sprints, I didn't talk about this because there is no minor blocks, it's only the major blocks, which is off-season, pre-season, and in-season. Instead for the sprints, I have pretty much the workouts are set, but I'll just vary the distances, the reps, and the sets as the weeks go on, and also the weights depending on what we're doing. And for the gym and plyos, there is blocks. For the plyometric, there's 3 main blocks, whilst for the gym, there's 4. I'm currently in the first block, week 1 to 3. And the goal of the first block is to regain strength that I had last season. I usually regain that in about 2 weeks. So on the screen, I've got a couple of stats that are quite noteworthy. I'm going to quickly talk over them. The 2 most important ones that I care about right now is the body fat, 15%, and my strongest day. So I have it down as strongest day Friday, but it's actually Thursday for you guys. I just rechanged the days because I've reshuffled my training plan. Not the actual exercises so much, but more just the days I train to get them more in line with my track, so that it's not as confusing next week, whereas the way I formatted it in this video, I don't want to just confuse you guys for no reason. So I just had it straight out like that. But the body fat, 15%, I had that body fat in August. And I know my diet didn't really change much or my general habits. So exercise-wise. So I know my body fat is still around that right now. We're going to remeasure in December. But the goal is to get this to 7%, which is, I think, is 6 kg of pure fat, which is really lean because sprinters shouldn't have that much fat. Something I actually wanted to note was I measured this the day after I ran my 11:19 with wind, negative wind. So the fact that I ran so fast with so much fat just really goes to show that last season I could have done something even crazier if I was more careful with my diet, because I didn't pay attention to my diet at all. But like I've already said, this season we're paying a lot more attention and I am being strict on my diet so we can get this body fat down. Now, the exercises that I was doing throughout this entire week stay the same for the first 3 weeks, and the goal of them is just to try and build as much strength as possible beyond my strength at the peak, which is only going to be for a week before we introduce more things. But not just the strength components, we're also looking at improving my mobility, my tendons, and my cardio. So my mobility, we've got stuff like seated good mornings, the Jefferson curls, and some other stuff, whilst for my cardio, we've only got the bike, where the focus is obviously on trying to improve my cardio, but it's more fashioned towards a sprinter. Is 4 times 1 minute with 30 seconds of rest. That's going to change at some point. The reason why I have that is for my aerobic capacity, but we want to improve that for 2 reasons. First off, if I have a good aerobic capacity, I can recover from sessions better. And second, when I'm competing, I should be able to have better 200 meters, because the 200, we break it down into the middle. We've got the first and the second 100. The first 100 is pure power and technique to run that bend really well. Whilst for the final 100, it's how well can you hold your top speed, which is speed endurance. But the only issue is speed endurance is a myth. If you actually want to have good speed endurance, you need to have really good technique, really strong tendons, and a really good aerobic base. The aerobic base becomes more prevalent the higher up the distance you do. For example, for 100, there is a minor aerobic component which occurs late into the 100. We're talking like final 10, 20 meters. But the 100 is so short and so power focused, it's barely even noticeable. For 200, it is more noticeable. And what's really interesting is I don't really struggle with maintaining my technique, so I have good speed endurance, and I don't struggle with losing power for the final 100, so I again have good speed endurance. But my aerobic capacity can be hit or miss on the day depending on how I run that bend. If I run the bend extremely hard, I come around and I'm kind of dying, and I'm struggling to try and maintain my technique at times and maintain my power, definitely. So if we can get the aerobic capacity to go up, we can expect that when I go and run my 100, my 200, I know that yes, I can run a 200 without getting fatigued, but I don't have to run a conservative bend. I can go out hard like I'm supposed to, the way I've trained myself to, and trust my body's not going to shut down later on. Because whilst it never shut down last season, it has shut down in the past, and that was scary. A scary moment, and if possible, I don't want to ever feel like I was running a 400 in a 200 race. Along with that, I have listed out the days, the weights, which I'm not going to talk about, but the intensities, how I felt with each day. And all of the sessions I found were moderate intensity, just all right. They weren't easy, they weren't hard, other than Saturday, which is also moderate, but I have it down as the hip thrust being really hard because I'm moving more than 200 kilograms of weight at 75% on my 1 rep max. And it's a struggle because my body hasn't done any of this for a while. So trying to get back up is really going to take a while. We're going to expect next week for me to be able to do this easy. If not, we've got an issue because generally, again, I regain my strength within 2 weeks. Now, I just said 75% of my 1 rep max. Why? Reason being is I'm trying to start at low weights, 75% for legs, 65% for upper body over my 1 rep max for every single exercise. And then I'm going to increase the weight by the equivalent of, I believe, is 2% every week, so that as I'm progressing through the weeks, we're slowly getting close to my 1 rep max. I've done this last season, and the goal of it is to try to make it so that I'm doing my 1 rep max for reps. For example, for the clean and jerk, my 1 rep max when I started last season was 80 kg. And then by the time we got to the end of off season, I was moving that for my just general session. And along with that, because of how I was training, I managed to increase my movement by 20 kg. So I'm expecting similar progressions from doing this. I'm trying to, like I've said before in Project 21 episode 0, I'm trying to take the good from my previous seasons and expel the bad. The good in this case being how I set up my training, the bad being the intensity of it. So I'm going to keep this because I do believe it's good and I do see the value in it moving forwards.